Welcome back, guys. Let's go ahead and pick up where we left off. We're going to use the header component by giving it data that is changing every second, and we're going to use that to update the title of our page. So let's get right into it. First, let's just wire up a simple interval that is going to change some data that we will be passing to our component. This is going to be my data, and it's going to be a number. And every second, we're going to say data plus plus. So that now we have data that is changing. And now we can pass this data to the title prop of our new component. In order to make sure that the data matches the type that it wants, we need to toString it. But also note this syntax here. You probably have picked it up already, but this is how we do interpolation in JSX. I may have mentioned it before, but it's worth noting. Now, let's open the browser and see if this worked. It looks like definitely the first value is here, but it doesn't seem to be changing. I'm going to go ahead and add a debug statement so that I can attach my browser to the code that is running. You can just use the debugger keyword, and next time you go to the browser, if you refresh and open the DevTools, the debugger will be hit. So in this case, it looks like the value is 4, so it must have already ran a few times. So what could be the problem here? Let's go into the whiteboard. Remember, we talked about the components and how they talk to each other. And I'm going to reuse this drawing to show you what is happening, that we are not seeing our data get updated. The gist of the matter is that there is a representation of the application in React. We're going to call that the logical representation of the HTML of the application, and then we have over here the actual HTML. We're going to call that the physical. And over here we're going to have HTML, not JSX, not JavaScript, actual HTML. And this is what the browser will receive and what it will render. So the reason why our data is not getting updated is because JSX is essentially going to become a instruction for React to re-render a certain part of the HTML. It could be the header or the timer or whatever. And if we update the value in the code of, in our case, the data property, the code will be changing and it will be updating, but React is no longer aware. So you have the logical version of the HTML with probably a new state, and then the physical version of the HTML that has not been updated because React doesn't really know that it got updated. And the way we can let React know that there has been an update in a way that they recommend is to use state. Now, the big difference between state and props is that props are external to components, and the state is the internal state of a component. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So in order to get this little function to work as expected, we're gonna need to call in a React hook. I don't want to go too deeply into hooks. I will make a video in the future, but suffice it to say that this is how we use them. We import them from React. I already know the name of this hook. And it's going to be a function that is gonna let us set a default value for this property. And then here I am destructuring the value that comes out. We'll have first the actual data, and then a function to set the data. This is where the notification will happen. So every time we call set data, we will be telling the React Shadow DOM, which is where the state is kept, hey, something changed, you need to re-render. And it'll go and identify the smallest piece of HTML to re-render, and it'll re-render only that. This is why it's very important to keep a very close eye on the relationship between props and components, because there's rules we will talk about in order to explore how exactly this works later. But for now, suffice it to say, pay attention to how you send data, because React wants you to use one-way data flow. So in this case, for this to work, we're gonna have to set data instead of just do data plus plus. So we're gonna say data is gonna be data plus 1. If we jump back to our browser, we should be able to see the data. I am not going to need this debugger statement anymore. But we should be able to see our data getting updated as expected. Ha! We got it. In short, that is the biggest difference between props and state. And now you know how to use state. But this actually has many problems with it. So we don't really want to use this for our timer or any production code, really. We just need data that changes to go into our header so that we can see how it updates, and we can learn more about how and when React decides to re-render a child based on a change from the parent. And we're gonna cover that in the next video, so you don't wanna miss it. It's getting really juicy and you're learning deep, deep React stuff. See you next time.